and depending on how long our discussions take, the conference will end no later than 9 a.m. Pacific time. These conferences are recorded and will be accessible online after we process them. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please type it in the message box. And also, please mute your mic during the presentation to prevent any background noises. But during our discussion, feel free to turn it on. Are there any questions? All right. So today, last week we wrapped up our first round of presentations. So now we'll begin our second round of presentations. So for today, Brian and I will go over some of our ideas that we have for the second round. Here's an overview for today's conference. I'll briefly go over the first round of presentations, and then Brian will discuss some of our ideas that we have for the second round. After we present our ideas, we'll have a discussion session for your thoughts on the matter, and then we'll also have a portion of our conference where we'll be receiving feedback from the first round of presentations. And we'll then close off with a few action items. For our first round of presentations, it started in January and lasted around 4 months. And in total, we had around 24 presentations. The goal of the first round was for everyone to have a general idea of each tool, on how to use it, what it's used for, and how it could potentially use for the BD2K project. And for these 4 months, we were able to spawn two collaborations, including the GeneWiki and UCLA collaboration, as well as the Balance GPS and identifiers.org. So for our second round, we'll continue to promote our recap collaborations through these conference calls. This time we'll be diving deeper into each tool and going over the technical details. Presenting the technical details sounds pretty vague, so we've broken them down into 3 categories, which Brian will go over in more detail.
Okay, thanks. So, right when we first started the series, it was intended, because a lot of people weren't familiar with what was being produced by the other institutions, so we wanted to sort of familiarize everybody from a user's point of view, what's a tool, what's the purpose, and how it's used. But some people expressed interest, in going into more detail on sort of the inner workings of their project. So we got some ideas here for how we can present that easily. So you don't have to cover all these things. If you don't think they're relevant to your tool, you don't have to worry about it. These are just some ideas to help you come up with useful presentations. So you can talk about your development process. So lessons learned, mistakes you made while developing, and what good decisions were made that cut down on development time, and what would you do differently. So if you originally started working on your project, using a particular framework or architecture, and then part of the development you had to scrap it for a particular reason, that would be really useful for developers to hear about that process, and why you made the decision you did. Another topic is technologies. Like your front end or your back end technologies, like the languages, like the reason that you selected a particular technology to work with. It might be something simple like just most people in the lab already knew. It's not really that relevant, but just whatever the strengths and why you chose a particular technology. Maybe certain people, in our center aren't necessarily aware of that. So that could be helpful. You describe the architecture, especially if it's novel or tailored, specific to your tool, and the use of any interesting or novel algorithms, and what sort of are there any trade-offs that you've made of your service between performance and bandwidth, and what steps have you done to sort of maximize bandwidth or maximize performance? And finally, a little bit different, just talking about updates. So talk about the current things you're working on in the tool, especially anything that's changed since your last presentation. So if you mentioned new features and you've completed those, or you've brought them to a new stage of development, you could talk about that. Or if you've since come up with new ideas for features that haven't been implemented yet but are going to be implemented, you could mention those, and it'd be a great way to get feedback from other developers. And let's talk about your current collaborations. So we sort of, because most people sort of had a blank slate. Most people sort of had a blank slate understanding of the other tools initially, but now we sort of understand what the other parts of our center are producing. We kind of anticipate that this next round will be more interactive, with more feedback and more let's see. Right, so I've got a list of topics here. So I mean, we don't have to all go into detail right now about you know, how each one of these points specifically relates to what our tool we're working on. But I mean, looking at this list right now, does anybody here think that they have more material to present on some of these topics? And just like a brief example of anything that you could incorporate into your presentation.
Yeah, this is Andrew here. This is a nice list, and thanks, guys, for putting it together. You know, I think in addition to really pushing deeper on the technical side of things, I actually would really enjoy emphasizing the collaboration piece that you mentioned. Because, right, I mean, I think as a BD2K Center, we brought together a lot of really cool existing technologies and existing development efforts, but what I think really will be judged on at the end of this all is how we brought everything together into, a real center. So, maybe one way of phrasing this is, okay, if you have existing collaborations with other centers or other investigators not at your particular site, describe those. And if you don't, brainstorm 2 or 3 ideas, how you would want to interact, and then that could be fodder for discussion.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, definitely. When you're giving a presentation, collaboration is absolutely key. So any possible avenues for collaboration should definitely be brought up.
But just to make the point, right? I mean, I would be perfectly happy if somebody wanted to present only on the subject of collaborations, right? I mean, I think there is value in getting technical details from other people, but if the technologies are too different or whatever, Anyway, I think discussion and ideas around building bridges, to me, could be the entire topic of somebody's presentation if that's what they chose to do.
Great. Yeah, that's a great point. So, right. So actually, yeah, we shouldn't. Nobody's required to do a presentation on these technical details, and yeah, that's absolutely true. A presentation solely on collaborations would also be acceptable, or even encouraged. So you sort of have more free reign here in this second round.
I think. So I think one of the ideas I was thinking about is to have so when you're presenting the tool, you would also be leading the discussion for, I guess, collaboration ideas, or I guess you would propose a couple of ideas and then ask for user feedback or feedback from everyone attending the conference, and then from there we can start a discussion. I don't know, what do you guys think of that idea?
one thing we could do is we could almost have like a so like a checklist. Like let's say we're presenting Copa KB, and we've got information on proteins. I mean, we could sort of say, like, well, every other tool in that domain, like mygene.info, where you could put in like a gene or protein ID, or React. We could sort of just go down the list. So say, like, because we're dealing in a domain of proteins, and then we have like protein identifiers. These are all the other tools in that same domain. So just sort of say, and then open up the discussion. Okay, how could this interact with mygene.info? How could this interact with Reactome, etc. And if we did that for every tool, we'd be bound to come up with a lot of new collaborations. Does anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, so I guess we'll move on here. So also we would want to try to get feedback, either actually feedback like right now, just during the conference would be great, or feedback later on in terms of emails. So what did you guys like about the conference series so far? Was it useful to you? How was it useful to you? What could be improved? Any sort of feedback you guys have on our first series of conferences here? Any sort of feedback would be great.
Hi, this is Sarah Scruggs. I just wanted to say thank you guys for all your hard work. I've learned a tremendous amount from the technical talks in the first round. I did want to say, and I think this is sort of in the same vein of what's already been said, but I do think that and this will probably happen with the collaboration focus of the next series, but the tool presentation was really nice, and it gave us an overview, and I know that was sort of the purpose of the first series. However, because this is a BD2K Center, we have targeted goals. I would have liked maybe to see a slide listing sort of, this is where we are, and this is where we want to go with BD2K. These are sort of our goals, if you will, our objectives, our action items, and I think with the next focus, as you're describing, that will probably happen. But I think what that does, a slide like that, is it focuses our discussion on items that have high priority. Do you understand what I'm saying? Things that are going to ultimately be, high priority items for the center and to achieve the goals that we've outlined thus far. So, but yeah. That's my comment.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the feedback.
This is Andrew again. So I like Sarah's suggestion. That's fantastic. Another thought occurred to mind is that one way of framing both collaborations and milestones and goals is in the context of real biological or biomedical questions. So I would actually really wouldn't mind a presentation by Carol Watson on the MESA study or Mary Lindsay on the Jackson Heart study. I know that was covered a little bit at the PI meeting, but going into a little bit more detail on the context of this molecule would be very useful in terms of driving biological projects.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great idea.
I agree 100% with Andrew. I think we need to keep the biology very close, because that's why we're doing all of this. And in addition to that, we have, particularly in Pepe's lab and others, Mary's and Carol's, we have domain scientists, that are cardiovascular biologists. So if you can think of any way to sort of incorporate, presentations from our lab that have more of a biological focus, and maybe, we can present things from the perspective of the user. That also might be a nice blend with some of the more technical computer science type information.
Yeah, that's right. We had Edward Lau do a presentation on the protein turnover. Right? That was a really interesting presentation.
Yeah, we were just at the biocuration conference. We meaning from our lab, Tevik, Anders, and myself, and then Henning and Sandra were there from, I believe, BI, and Chunlei was there from Scripps. So we were just at this conference. We presented, our collaboration with Andrew's lab on the gene wiki within the cardiac subproteomes of interest, and we received, it was overwhelmingly positive feedback from the biocurators there, saying, wow, this is awesome because you're domain scientists, you know so much about your proteins. So we're sort of coming at it from a different angle. Also, we have, close ties with the domain scientist community. So, that's a big sort of hurdle in these types of projects, is there's sort of a disconnect between the biocuration world and the biomedical scientist world. So I do think that's really important, and we do have a nice blend of different types of scientists in our center, and so I think we should use that to our advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any other feedback? Okay, so well, you guys can email us if you do have any other feedback. So, okay, so I'll quickly go over some of the action items. So after this conference, Brian and I will talk it over, kind of structure the second round of presentations, and we'll send out an email, detailing what the second round will be entailing, and we'll also be sending out a form for everyone to sign up for a presentation slot for the second round, and I'll be sure to provide the instructions so that you're clear on what you'll be presenting about. So once everyone has signed up, Brian and I will create a schedule for the second round, and we'll email the schedule to everyone and make sure everyone's okay with their slots. And hopefully we can have the schedule out by maybe end of next week or the week after. And also, like I mentioned, please email any feedback you may have regarding our technical conferences. We're happy to hear what you think of the conferences so that we can make them even better.
Also, I have a question here. So for the Google Forms, only people who will sign up can be the people who specifically received an email.
No, anyone.
Right. So we should set this one up so that anybody can sign up. So this would be the time, if when we send out this invitation, that if you have domain scientists working in your laboratory, you just forward them and say, hey, we'd really appreciate it. It'd be really helpful to do your presentation. And then just give them access to the sign-up sheet. So you can do one more presentation per lab, if that's the case where you have scientists who'd like to give a more scientific presentation.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So I'll also mention an email to forward it to the scientists in your center, so that we can get more presentations about the science. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening. We'll be happy to take any questions that you have now.
I just want to say, generally everything was said, I quite agree, so I don't have anything to add. But I was just wondering, there are some little work and going across different groups. So would there be something planned to, for example, present or discuss about the current ongoing works or collaboration in related to BD2K or not?
So you mean do like a 1 week where we talk about the collaborations that have already taken place or already exist?
Yes, the ones that, well, it's very early stages, but essentially, sort of, how would it fit in?
Yeah, yeah, like you mentioned, these collaborations are definitely in their early stages. But I think this second round will be a great time to introduce it to everyone in our BD2K Center. So yeah, that's a great idea. We'll definitely get those going. Hopefully we'll have some presentations about those collaborations. That's a good idea.
One of the reason I was thinking, because some of them are, for example, led by Henning. So whatever we have will be included in their presentation. So it won't be anything extra that we could add to what already been sort of initiated and run by them. So it essentially, whatever they say, it will include whatever work from our side. So the numbers kind of will reduce if it's related to sort of ongoing works rather than existing services and works and however it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you anyway for setting this up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, we'll conclude our conference here. So please, yeah, just expect an email with all the action items, and sometime next week, probably Monday or Tuesday, we'll we'll have an email out explaining what the second round will be about, and just expect it to be more about collaborations. So thank you for attending this conference.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.